Doctrine first, capabilities second. Part 2. Some may call it good luck, and others bad luck. But the fact that there happens to be a multitude of military doctrines, ranging from US's emphasis on aerial superiority, plus its carrier-based naval power, Russia's extensive submarine fleet and its land-based air force configuration, North Korea's artillery and missile addiction, China's multi-range land, air and naval-launched missile force, and the insurgents, of course, with their immense love of the Toyota Land Cruiser pickup, aka the Technical. Only to name a few, for the list could take me up a whole day. Hi, this is the amateur analyst, keenly analyzing topics from the back rooms. Take it with a pinch of salt till your kidneys can't take it anymore. One other factor to consider is that a country doesn't only have one doctrine. One may have multiple doctrines for different situations or theaters of war, making our doctrine list poor of the age. Some current wars, for example, the Russo-Ukraine conflict, the Israel-Palestine conflict, the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, and some other shadow conflicts, such as the Sudan civil war and the Congo multiplayer conflict, have real impacts on the doctrines of the different parties involved. One country may enrich or advance its current doctrine, another may develop a completely new one, while another may drop an old doctrine and maybe take notes or copy a new doctrine to compare results. Let's dive deep enough into this rabbit hole. Threat assessment and prioritization. Moving on to our first key point, threat assessment and prioritization. Understanding what a nation perceives as its primary threats helps in deciphering its military doctrine. Take China, for instance. Their doctrine centers on regional defense, anti-access area denial strategies, and modernization. I'm talking rapid. This is driven by concerns over territorial disputes, the US presence in the Asia-Pacific, and most of all, the Taiwan issue. Countries set up doctrines according to their major threats. Say, for example, United States, whose main threats are peer competitors, non-state actors, and cyber threats. Therefore, for a doctrine, the US follows a comprehensive approach emphasizing power projection, technological superiority, and global partnerships. It places importance on flexibility and the ability to respond to a wide range of threats. Russia, with the main threats being NATO expansion, regional instability, cyber threats. Therefore, for a doctrine, Russia's military focuses on defense of its territorial integrity with an emphasis on strategic nuclear forces. It also involves a blend of conventional and asymmetric capabilities, including cyber and information warfare. India, whose main threats are territorial disputes with China and Pakistan, terrorism, and cyber threats. So its military doctrine is primarily defensive with a focus on maintaining territorial integrity. It emphasizes a credible minimum deterrence for nuclear weapons and has evolved to include joint operations and integration of modern technology as of recent. Israel, with its main threats being regional adversaries like Iran, terrorism, and unconventional threats. Israel's military doctrine is focused on proactive defense and deterrence. It emphasizes the use of technology, intelligence, and rapid response capabilities. Israel also maintains a qualitative military edge in the region. Iran, whose main threats are regional adversaries, US influence, cybersecurity threats, nuclear hacks. Iran's military doctrine includes a combination of conventional and asymmetric capabilities. It emphasizes deterrence, including its ballistic missile program, and focuses on regional influence, only to name but a few. African military perspectives. Now let's turn our attention to the diverse military theaters of Africa, where nations have crafted doctrines and designs to address regional challenges. Nigeria, with its well-established military, emphasizes regional stability. The Nigerian armed forces, equipped with T-72 tanks and Alpha jets, showcase a commitment to peacekeeping and counter-insurgency operations against rebel groups like the notorious Boko Haram occupying northern Nigeria. Whereas on the other hand, the South African National Defense Force boasts a unique history with its Ricat armored car standing out as an indigenous design. The Ricat, with its wheeled configuration and advanced firepower, represents a mobile and adaptable force tailored to the specific needs of the region. Countries like Uganda, which is one of the 7 official and major Russian weapon importers on the African continent, happens to have a completely different doctrine, a doctrine that it has crafted for the past 4 decades: rebel repulsion and elimination. Well, if you are ground zero of some of Africa's most notorious rebel groups, the Lord's Resistance Army, led by the mysterious Joseph Kony, and the ADF Allied Democratic Forces, with conflict-prone neighbors like South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Somalia, you are left no choice but to arm yourself with a bunch of MIL Mi-24s, Su-30s, T-90s, T-85s, BMPs, and South African mine-protected armored personnel carriers. As though that wasn't enough, you even continue to test out your doctrine in different versions in the dense tropical forests of the Congo and Central African Republic, the urban and desert theaters in South Sudan and Somalia. This allows for lessons to be learned, corrections made to the existing doctrine. Infinite arms race. Many of us may think that this is a new and recent syndrome when observing the relics of the Cold War, like the rare Soviet ekranoplans, but this dates way back to individual tribesmen making more spears than their rival tribe, increasing the polishing and piercing implements even more to increase lethality. It ranges from the Hittites in Turkey fighting Syrians as far back as 1650 BC on light chariots with archers wearing iron armor and equipped with powerful bows and bronze-tipped arrows, to a Parthian mounted archer shooting backwards as they rode, which gave them an enormous advantage in their expansionist regime in 171 BC, to Genghis Khan in 1200 AD with his army and military might based on the speed and ferocity of its mounted archers, enabling him to conquer vast tracts of land. Back and forth it proceeds. One side introduces a concept, for example when the US introduced the F-15 to counter the Soviet MiG-25 in 1976. The Soviet Union then introduced the mighty Su-27 flanker, which topped the bar. This is when the US decided to change the subject of the topic with the introduction of stealth, starting with the F-117 Nighthawk in 1983 and following it up with the F-22 Raptor. Then the Soviets were doing their bit in some development concepts such as the strange MiG-1.44 or the MiG-MFI to counter the F-22 before things went south in 1991, where they ceased to exist. There was a huge vacuum left to fill for about a decade or so, with the US having no near peer until the tech renaissance of China that erupted in the early 2000s, in unison with North Korea's nuclear program and Iran's near-nuclear program, Russia's revival, and a lot more. Meanwhile, the US was still involved in toppling Middle Eastern governments and a North African one. It was not until the mid-2010s that think tanks came up to realize that there was a whole park filled with new playmates. And so the arms race game resumed and is still ongoing at full speed. How is Anchor Proxy? Proxies. Yes, you heard it right. Proxy wars are what is in definition a war instigated by a major power which does not itself become involved or sometimes directly involved to a small scale through a militant group or through military aid. Now just point to a random continent on the world map and I'll tell you where the proxy wars, proxies, and possibly who is believed to be behind them are. Asia, we have Taiwan. Although not in conflict yet, it is aging for it, with military aid from mainly Western countries and Japan, and the major powers behind that near proxy being US and China. We have the Middle East, with the Israel-Palestine conflict, with Israel being backed and partly funded by the US and other NATO countries, and Palestine with the Hamas militant group believed to be a proxy of Iran. The Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, with Russia being the main weapon supplier behind Armenia, and Israel and Turkey being the main arms suppliers of the other side. The Red Sea tensions, with Iran-backed Houthi proxies going against mainly Western cargo ships and facing resistance directly from the US forces. Moving to Africa, we have the Congo multiplayer war, as I like to call it, involving rebel groups like the ADF, Allied Democratic Forces, backed by a jihadist movement and being combated directly by East African forces, mainly the Ugandan forces, and then another rebel group known as M23, which is believed to be a Rwandan proxy, being fought by a combination of Congolese armed forces, UN peacekeepers, and of recent South African National Defense Forces, only to name but a few. Top Nuke League. United States, Russia, France, China, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea belong to this league, with a total of approximately 13,000 nuclear weapons, give or take. This league comes with a set of behaviors, pros and cons. This league possesses the advantage that no country outside this league or part of it is comfortable with the idea of going to war with any member of this league. When you join this league, you instantly transform from being bullied to being able to bully. It's you to choose. You can be added to summits such as the UN Council just for the good of the world. You can invade a country and no one on the league or outside this league can do something about it, well, directly. Decisions are not forced onto you as suggested by other countries in the fear of angering you. All of this is due to the fear of nuclear war. This league can be divided into three groups based on how the nuclear weapons were acquired. We have the independents, or in other words, the founders, like the US and the former Soviet Union, now primarily Russia, and the American-aided group like the United Kingdom that did it openly, France secretly, and Israel, which received second-hand help from France and the United Kingdom, followed by the Soviet-aided group, which includes China to some extent, Pakistan, yes, India to some extent, and North Korea. At this point, one can already notice a pattern. The nuclear proliferation was all part of the Cold War, which was basically about spreading ideologies and convincing people to join your side through such endeavors. But getting the nuclear weapons is not the whole package. You must construct or acquire platforms such as ballistic missiles of significant and, if possible, global range, cruise missiles, bombs compact enough to be dropped from an aircraft, aka fighters, bombers, and anything in between. But what even makes you be taken more seriously is if you manage to construct or obtain nuclear-armed submarines that can launch nukes from anywhere in the world. Nuclear fallout. If you read something about the 60s to 80s era, you must be familiar with the terms nuclear winter, nuclear fallout. These fears led to the adoption of doctrines such as the MAD, mutually assured destruction, which literally means each side possessing nuclear weapons, only enough to completely annihilate each other. As mad as this idea may seem, it was implemented to try and cut on the numbers of the world enders, which peaked in the 80s at around 70,000 nuclear devices. This was for only 2 countries. Not just imminent. You may have heard from multiple news sources in videos such as analysts and think tanks the overuse of the words that give off a sense that global war is imminent. Well, if you observe carefully and read between the lines, although empty most times, you will notice a few sinister things. Power is shifting hands in almost every corner of the globe. It seems the innovation and introduction of cheap yet effective weapons, such as drones, can be fielded in literally any activity. For example, search and track to attack, aka suicide and non-suicide, demining, as anti-tank devices, and many other ways. This combined with the rise of multiple regional powers and some complex politics of interest, mainly minerals such as oil, trade routes, and new minerals such as lithium, cobalt, and many other minerals, thanks to battery technologies. As though adding more spices to the already delicious soup, there is a phenomenon of near peers such as US and China, which was last observed in the Cold War, though the Soviets weren't as good economically, coupled with a yet more strange situation known as the multipolar system, where there are also several other mid-powers. With emerging sparks in the Middle East, Red Sea, Taiwan, Ukraine, the African coal lineup, and of course the near-infinite Congo, the aging Ethiopian conflict, the upcoming Somaliland or sometimes it's already present, and the Sudan civil war. In fact, with all these sparks, the only surprise will be if a hot global war doesn't occur, because if it does, it just aligns with the available data. I stand to be corrected. Have a great day.